On the 22nd of November 2002, we went up to a mountain to pray, and was driven strongly and with much eagerness by the Holy Spirit to call on the name of our God, Yeshua, our Messiah. Then the word of the Lord came to me, saying, "Curse not the king, no, not even in your thoughts, and curse not the rich in your bedchamber, for a bird of the air will carry the voice, and a winged creature will tell the matter." Yeshua had revealed to us that he whom he sets up as king, even he you shall not curse, for Yeshua had granted him his position. He also revealed how a bird of the air will carry a voice, and a winged creature will tell the matter. We will now look at how Satan will give a plan to the Antichrist will give a plan to a man in order for him to become the Antichrist, and in order for him to be able to rule the whole world. After this word from the Lord, another word of the Lord came to us on the 22nd of November 2002. And I heard the Lord said, "Have you not heard? Have you not understood what God will do?" 3 times I heard it clearly. I knew that the Lord wanted to speak to us. And as I looked up into the heaven, I saw in the north a sign of one that was standing in Jerusalem. And I heard how he crowed king in the holy city. And out of his mouth came something like a stream of fire, or water that went towards the continent of Asia. Then I saw a sign that appeared from the Lord, and I saw a vision of the entire continent of Asia, the commonwealth of the independent states of the Union of the Soviet Social Republic, that appeared in front of me in the northwestern sky. And after this I saw a sign of the spirit of an elephant that appeared over the continent. God was indicating what the elephant resembles. As I looked, I saw the stream which looked like fire that came out of the one who was standing in the north, which swallowed up the entire continent of Asia. Yeshua, through signs in the heavens, had shown us how one will rise up at that time, standing in Jerusalem, and he will crow king in the holy city. The symbolism of Yeshua is so awesome. Not only does he crow king, but he is also resembled by a cock. And many times during the fast, Yeshua had spoken of a person which he calls the cocky one, the arrogant one. Often I have thought that when he spoke of the arrogant one and the cocky one, that these two were the same, as I have said earlier. But now we reveal to you that Yeshua had revealed that at the time when the abomination of desolation is set up, will come another one who will be the destroyer. And he is known as the cocky one, who will crow king in the holy city. Then I saw out of his mouth came something like a stream of fire. We know that Yeshua will judge the earth with a stream of fire that came out of his mouth. And Yeshua will allow this king to rule for 1 hour with the 10 rulers through mighty technology of nuclear weapons, of the firepower of the United Nations and the NATO forces. And we see how he will remove and completely destroy the entire continent of Asia. That which Yeshua had shown us was as was prophesied by the prophet Jeremiah, saying, "We have heard of the pride of Moab, that he is very proud, even of his arrogance, his conceit, his wrath, his untruthful boasting. Moab therefore shall wail for Moab, everyone shall wail for the ruins the flagons of wine and the raisin cakes of Kir Haresh, you shall sigh and mourn, utterly stricken and discouraged. For the fields of Heshbon languish and wither, the vines of Shibna, the lords of the nations have broken down Moab's choice vine branches, which reaches even to Jazer. Wandering in the wilderness, his shoots stretch out abroad. They passed over the shores of the Dead Sea. Therefore I will weep with the wailing of Jazer for the vines of Shibna, and I will drench you with my tears, O Heshbon and Eliah. For upon your summer fruits and your harvest, the shout of alarm and the cry of the enemy has fallen, and gladness is taken away, joy out of the plentiful field. And in the vineyards there is no singing, nor is there joyful sound. The traders tread down no wine in the presses, for the shout of joy has been made to cease. We see that Moab is in the area where today we have the areas of Iraq and Afghanistan and Pakistan. And this is also the same area that Yeshua had indicated, and how all those nations up to the Himalayas, they will be destroyed in the first blast of the cocky one that will blow fire coming from his mouth towards them, destroying them, consuming them completely, stopping them in their tracks. Wherefore my heart sounds like a harp in mournful compassion for Moab, and my inner being goes out for Kir Haresh, for those brick-walled citadels of his. It shall be that when Moab presents himself, when he wearies himself worshipping on the high places of idolatry, that he will come to his sanctuary of Chemosh, the god of Moab, but he will not prevail. Then will he be ashamed of his God. This is the word of the Lord has spoken concerning Moab, since that time when Moab's pride and resistance to God were first known. But now the Lord has spoken, saying, within 3 years, as the years of a hireling who will not serve longer than the allotted time, the glory of Moab will be brought into contempt, in spite of all his mighty multitudes of people, and the remnant that survives will be very small, feeble, and of no account. Yahweh revealed to his servant Isaiah that Moab will trust in his high places. We see a picture of where a fort is built high up on the mountain. Because of this height, they have trusted in their high places, and they have worshipped their god, Chemosh, or the god of the wilderness. But God says he will bring them down from there. He will make low their pride and their resistance to God. And their survivors, they will be very few. Only a remnant will be survived. As I looked also on the 22nd of November 2002, I saw the sign of the continent of Asia appeared, and how the southern part of the continent disappeared into the sea up to the Himalayas. Now if we consider the whole area that is south of the Himalayas, we will see all the nations that are included in that part. We see Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Mongolia, Kazakhstan, the Republic of China, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Myanmar, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, India, Iran, and Turkmenistan. All of these nations are all on the south of the Himalayas. Yeshua revealed how the elephant The elephant, being one of the largest known mammals that is walking on the earth now, is also the largest known continent of the world that will be removed completely. It is just as Yeshua had said, that when the 4 angels are released, they will kill a third of mankind. Living in the area of India and China alone stays more than 2 billion people. That is more, or about a third of mankind that lives in this area of the earth. After we had seen this sign, the word of the Lord came to me at that moment, saying, "Wail, for the day of the Lord is at hand. As destruction from the Almighty and Sufficient One, Shaddai, will it come. Therefore will all hands be feeble, and every man's heart will melt, and they shall be dismayed and terrified. Pangs and sorrow shall take hold of them, and they will be in pain as a woman in childbirth, and they will gaze stupefied and aghast at one another. Their faces will be aflame from the effects of the unprecedented warfare. Behold, the day of the Lord is coming, fierce, with wrath and raging anger, to make the land and the whole earth a desolation, and to destroy out of it its sinners. For the stars of the heavens and their constellations will not give their light. The sun will be darkened at its rising, and the moon will not shed its light. And I, the Lord, will punish the world for its evil, and the wicked for their guilt and iniquity. And I will cause the arrogance of the proud to cease, and I will lay low the haughtiness of the terrible, and the boasting of the violent and the ruthless. I will make a man more rare than fine gold, and mankind scarcer than the pure gold of Ophir. Therefore I will make the heavens tremble, and the earth will be shaken out of its place at the wrath of the Lord of hosts in the day of his fierce anger. And like the chased roe or gazelle, and like sheep that no man gathers, each foreign resident will turn to his own people, and each will flee to his own land. Everyone who is found will be thrust through, and everyone who is connected with the slain and his court will fall by the sword. Their infants also will be dashed to pieces before their eyes, and their houses will be plundered, and their wives ravished." Isaiah 13, verse 6 to 16. Yeshua reveals how when this army comes in, they will start to destroy with great might and power. They will destroy the eastern nations. But this destruction is a destruction that is allowed from Yahweh. How men will be completely stupefied. But also in that day, there will be something else that will appear in the sky. We see how he says that the sun will be darkened at its rising, and the moon will not shed its light. We see that a solar eclipse will appear at that time. And so will a lunar eclipse later, the sun will be darkened and the moon will become blood, just as Acts 2 tells us. And these things will happen before the great and the terrible day of the Lord comes. And the Lord will punish the whole world for its evil and for its haughtiness and pride. We also see that the heavens will tremble at that time. The earth will be shaken out of its place because of the wrath of the Lord of hosts in the day of his fierce anger. The army of horses coming up out of the bottomless pit, just like Napoleon's horses in the French Revolution fought the battle, will come up and use their power, as we have seen, through the use of ballistic missiles and submarines and aircraft. The nuclear weapons in the US naval arsenal are deployed through ballistic missiles and submarines and aircraft. The Ohio-class submarine carries the largest iteration of the Trident missile, a three-stage underwater-launched nuclear bomb with MIRV capability, which is a tracking capability. The current Trident II or the D5 version is expected to be in service past 2020. The Navy's other nuclear weapons is the air-deployed B-61 nuclear bomb, as we have seen earlier. The B-61 is a thermonuclear device that can be dropped by strike aircraft such as the F/A-18 Hornet or the Super Hornet at high speed from a large range of altitudes, and it can be released through free fall or parachute and can be set to detonate in the air or on the ground. We can see that the nuclear capabilities with which the sheer brute force which they will then have at their disposal, they will be able to crush any nation, especially the nations of the East, consisting of China and India, Iran, and even Russia together. The Apostle John sees this cavalry that come up out of the bottomless pit, and is described to him in a vision, saying, "So the four angels who had been in readiness for that hour in the appointed day, month, and year were liberated to destroy a third of mankind. The number of their troops of cavalry was twice 10,000 times 10,000, or 200 million, and I heard what their number was. In my vision, the horses and their riders appeared to me like this. The riders wore breastplates and the color of fiery red, sapphire blue, and sulfur or brimstone yellow. The heads of the horses looked like lions' heads, and from their mouths they poured fire and smoke and sulfur and brimstone. And a third of mankind was killed by these three plagues, by the fire, by the smoke, and the sulfur or the brimstone that poured from the mouth of the horses." Yeshua had revealed that these red horses, similar like those in the French Revolution, will fight in the last days in battle against the Eastern nations, against the Chinese woman. But as I was considering this dream, and I wondered about the Calvary, I suddenly made another connection that Yeshua revealed to me that is so awesome in order to understand who is the army of 200 million. Many of us have thought that this army must be an army coming up out of China, because only China has such a great army. But actually this army does not refer to the Chinese, but refers to another army, because the horses and their riders are actually explained, and they are shown to John having breastplates that are fiery red, sapphire blue, and sulfur or brimstone yellow. We have seen that Yeshua had called the Antichrist the cocky one, a cock being a rooster. We also see that the French Revolution men wore on their heads something like a rooster's comb. And at that moment I made the connection. If you look at the carabiner, which is one of the soldiers that was in the French Revolution, their breastplates are sulfur yellow, their clothing is sapphire blue, and the lapels on the side of their breastplates are a color of fiery red. Yeshua had revealed the most flamboyant colors of the French Revolution army, thus indicating where this army of 200 million will be coming from. It will be an army that comes from the European Union, led by France, just as Napoleon Bonaparte had led the revolution in his time. The Arme Grande, or French for the Great Army, or the Grand Army, first entered the annals of history when in 1805 Napoleon I renamed this army that he had assembled on the French coast of the English Channel for the proposed invasion of Britain. It never achieved its primary goal, as Napoleon had to redeploy in the east in order to eliminate the threat of Austria and Russia, which were part of the Third Coalition assembled against France. Thereafter the name was used for the principal French army deployed in the campaigns of 1805 to 1807, where it got its prestige. In 1812 up to 1813, 1814. In practice, however, the term Arme Grande or Grande Armée is used in English to refer to all the multinational forces gathered by Napoleon I in his campaigns of the early 19th century. If you want to know more, look at the Napoleonic Wars. So this Grand Army, or the alliance of nations that fought with the French army, can be seen in the next table. When we look at this table, we see how the country of France was leading the French army, and at its height in 1812 it consisted out of 554,500 men, of which 300,000 were French and Dutch men, 95,000 were Pole, 35,000 were Austrians, 30,000 were Italians, 24,000 were Bavarians, 20,000 Saxons, 20,000 Prussians, 17,000 Westphalians, and 15,000 Swiss, and 3,500 Krauts. So we can see that this army actually has an amazing amount of nations put together. And all the nations of Europe that are around France actually stood allied with Napoleon I, making up a very large army. And these nations actually, in a remarkable way, resemble the European Union. So we can see that the Arme Grande, which Napoleon Bonaparte actually led, will, as Yeshua had revealed to us, will rise again in the last days. And we will now look at in detail how the Antichrist will rise to his position. We see how most of those nations that are part of the Arme Grande are also today part of the European Union and the NATO forces. After this sign had appeared to us, on the 22nd of November 2002, after the blast came on the eastern nations, another sign appeared to me. I saw how out of the beast in the north, that is, out of the capital of the European Union, out of Brussels, 3 horses sprang forth, as was prophesied. I saw the rider on the first horse, and on which he was riding. The first horse had a plume on his head, resembling a certain nation in history who had this plume as his insignia, decorating their horses when they go into battle. So Yeshua shows us how after the blast on the eastern nations happens, then 3 horses will spring forth. We know that after the white horse, the long horn, has been removed, there will be 3 horses still remaining, which is the red horse, the black horse, and the pale horse. Yeshua reveals the first horse, which is the red horse, which springs forth, as a horse that has a plume on its head. There are only 2 nations that I have researched that have had their horses with plumes on their heads, and that was the French cavalry as well as the British forces, soldiers in those days. We've already seen how Yeshua had pinpointed the nation of the cocky one as France. So we see again that Yeshua is revealing through these signs little bits of the puzzle, revealing that France will be leading this war against the East. On the 22nd of April 2002, a sign appeared to us which both of us saw at the same time, so that at the mouth of 2 witnesses every matter may be established. I saw a sign of one that moved from the southwest towards the north. And then I saw how a French hat, or what we call a bicon, appeared in the heavens. After having done some research on this hat, I found out that this hat is synonymous with Napoleon Bonaparte. Yeshua is revealing how the beast, or the Antichrist, or the man of sin, will arise and will fulfill his position, just like Napoleon Bonaparte had fulfilled his position. And in the final hour, he will go from the southwest towards the north in order to lie to the kings and deceive them with great trickery, just as Daniel had prophesied he would do. Napoleon Bonaparte was a type and a shadow of the coming Antichrist. Napoleon have also been part of secret societies. If we just look into history, we'll see that he was part of a club called the Jacobin Club, and it was through this club that he rose to power. We see a picture of the Jacobin Club, which is mainly consisting out of men that met in Saint Honore Street in Paris, in France. And this is how he, through a very few men in secret societies, rose to power to become the emperor. And just like we had compared President Obama to the Alexander the Great of our time, we now see how Yeshua compares the Antichrist to the emperor of France, Napoleon Bonaparte. As we have said earlier, how Yeshua revealed to us how through secret societies like the Freemasons, the beast will come to power. We see how Napoleon Bonaparte, making use of the Jacobin Club, through very few men, was actually voted in and became Emperor of France. Secret societies in our time that have great influence and power, like the Bilderberg Group, is a secret society consisting of around 130 people that get together, called the Bilderberg Club, and it's an unofficial annual invitation only conference of about 130 guests, most of whom are persons of great influence in the field of politics, business, banking, and media. The group meet annually at hotels or resorts throughout the world for 2 consecutive years in Europe, followed by a year in the United States or Canada. This tradition appeared to be broken in 2008 when the meeting was held in Virginia. so as to give their easier access to those associated with the US elections. The 2009 Bilderberg meeting took place from the 14th to the 16th of May in Athens, Greece. In a European Parliament session in Brussels, Mario Borghezio, an Italian member of the European Parliament, questioned the nominations of the Bilderberg and the trilateral attendees for the post of EU President and EU Foreign Minister. We see that the Bilderberg Group are some of the most influential people in media, in business and banking and politics. This is the people who have the greatest influence in the world. Although being behind the scenes, they, like puppeteers, can pull the strings so that the puppets will dance according to what they dictate. We see here how a question was raised regards the choosing of the President of the EU, how they could actually make sure that the person that they desire to be in charge or to be the leader can be put into position. We will see how Satan will use this organization to put into place the beast or the Antichrist, and how he, making use of deceptive trickery, will take the position by deceit, and will, although it was not given to him, he will deceive them in believing that he is the best person to receive or to fulfill the role of the leader of the Illuminati. When I saw this picture of the black limousine riding into the Bilderberg Group, most of those who come to this meeting are inside of black limousines and with tinted windows, so that men would not see who these are, and most of them drive into the underground garages so that no one will be able to recognize who is part of the Bilderberg meeting. There have been great research, and even the BBC had tried to get entrance into this meeting, trying to find out what kind of discussions are taking place and what is discussed in this place. We will see in a moment that Yeshua had one day, as we were praying, as we have said earlier, I heard the voice of one who spoke in a horsey type of voice. And when I asked my brother who this is, he said this is Henry Kissinger. As I did my research, I found out that one of those persons on the inside leaked in some information, and they asked him who is the person who actually lead this group of people. And he said that there's no real leader in the group, but there is one person who often speaks and basically have a great role in the Bilderberg Group. And this person is Henry Kissinger. Napoleon Bonaparte became the Emperor of France. Although in the beginning he was a populist, what it really means is that he had convinced the masses and the people that he was for them, and he mostly stood for those who were poor and underprivileged. And they, of course, voted for him. And after he was voted in, he turned emperor and dictator. Napoleon faced royalist and Jacobin plots as France's ruler, including the conspiration des Poignards, or the Daggers conspiracy in October 1800, and the plot of the Rue Saint-Nassin 2 months later. In January 1804, his police uncovered an assassination plot against him, which involved Morneau, in which was ostensibly sponsored by the Bon-Don former rulers of France. On the advice of Talleyrand, Napoleon ordered the kidnapping of the Duke of Enghien in violation of neighboring Bardin sovereignty. After a secret trial, the Duke was executed, even though he had not been involved in the plot. We see how, as we will have seen already, how key persons who are in positions that could influence his power or try to stop him from coming to power will be removed or executed, making use of assassinations and also through the Jesuits behind the scenes, removing any power that would try to interfere with their plans. The 200 million army coming up out of the bottomless pit, we have already seen will be led by France and will be consisting out of the NATO forces of the European Union. In an article I found, it says NATO expansion and the march to global conflict. The global military standpoint and the geopolitical ambitions of NATO increasingly underline and give glimpse of NATO operations and military directives. The system of military alliance is tightening, and its main targets seem to be the Eurasian giants of Russia, China, and possibly India. NATO expansion is not just limited to Europe and the former Soviet Union, but is in pursuit of a global characteristic. In Asia, an ASTIC parallel sister alliance to NATO is being formed from the network of existing military alliances in the Asian Pacific Rim. Russia, China, and Iran now are in the forefront of a reluctant Eurasian alliance that is taking shape to oppose NATO and the United States. Ultimately, it may be in the Middle East that the pace for NATO expansion will be established. If the Middle East falls under the total control of the Anglo-American alliance and NATO, the stage will be set for a new phase of the long war that will lead all the way into the heart of Eurasia. This proves that NATO have already got its feelers out and are preparing a battle and a war against its enemies who does not want to be in alliance with them. His enemies are Russia and China and Iran, and all other forces that are east of the Himalayas, including even India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and other smaller nations like Tajikistan and Uzbekistan, and all those nations who are predominantly Muslim will be standing together against the forces of the West in the last days.